Some people believe in miracles and some don't. The Church of Sainte Anne de Beaupre in Quebec, Canada, is known for miracles. People come here seeking miracles. And there have been many cases of people who were healed here after praying to Saint Anne, who is the mother of the Blessed Virgin Mary and the grandmother of Jesus Christ. One miraculous event that took place here in front of many eyewitnesses is linked to the gold statue of Saint Anne that sits between the two steeples on top of the building. The same statue also stood on top of the previous church building, which was a small Catholic church that burned to the ground in 1922. The inferno had reduced the church building to a pile of ashes, but after the fire, they found the statue of Saint Anne standing in the middle of all the ruins, unburnt and undamaged. This statue of Sainte Anne de Beaupre in the main sanctuary is also said to be miraculous because of healings that have occurred for people while praying to it. About 40 miracles are recorded here each year, according to records kept by the sanctuary. This statue, like most statues of Sainte Anne de Beaupre, depicts her holding the Blessed Mother Mary in her arms, just like any mother would hold their child. Just inside the entrance to the basilica, 2 columns rise to the ceiling stacked with crutches and walking canes, and photos left behind by those who have experienced a miracle at the shrine. We gazed at piles of crutches and canes that were cast aside by people who declared themselves cured of every kind of affliction and illness. These 2 pillows stand in silent testimony to the fact that miracles are still occurring inside these sacred walls. Although Saint Anne is not mentioned in the Bible, she is the patron saint of the sick and the poor. She is the patron saint of Canada. In France, she's also the patron saint of sailors. And that's actually how the whole thing began. In 1655, a group of French sailors set out for the New World. They came across the Atlantic Ocean and into the St. Lawrence River in Canada. Then, they had a terrible storm and they were sure they were going to drown. They prayed to Saint Anne, their patron saint, and they made a promise that if they washed ashore safely, they would build a chapel in her honor. Their prayers were answered. They washed ashore exactly where the basilica is today, and they immediately went to work building a little chapel. The first reported miracle at the site occurred during the construction of the shrine itself, when a man named Louis Guimond was hired to help build the chapel even though he was crippled by scoliosis. After placing 3 stones on the foundation of the shrine, Guimond was cured of all his ailments. This healing was followed by other testimonies of healed people, and the shrine quickly gained in popularity. The shrine of Sainte Anne de Beaupre is the oldest pilgrimage site in North America, and almost 1 million visitors come here each year to pay tribute to Saint Anne and ask her for blessings. The basilica also contains relics of Saint Anne. Bone fragments from Saint Anne's arm are kept here, the same arm that held Mary and Jesus. The story of how those relics ended up here is yet another documented miracle. The full account is told in a letter written by Pope St. Leo III. He described how the Emperor Charlemagne himself discovered the buried remains of Saint Anne on Easter Sunday in 792 AD. With the help of a deaf and blind boy.
First of all, my favorite part of Sainte Anne de Beaupre, the ceiling. That ceiling was all made at Beaupre, France. Little square ceramics, about 3/4 of an inch to an inch each. They sent over boxes and boxes of all these little tiles with numbers on them to be all replaced on the ceiling of Sainte Anne de Beaupre. This is, in my opinion, and a lot of other people, one of the finest works of art you will ever see in this area. It took years to complete, years. When they opened this church in 1935, it didn't look like this.
In the words of Pope St. Leo III, he wrote, "After our Lord's death, St. Mary Magdalene, St. Martha, St. Lazarus, and others of the little band of Christians were piled into a boat without sails or oars and pushed out to sea to perish. They were careful to carry with them the tenderly loved body of Our Lady's mother, Sainte Anne. When, by the power of God, their boat survived and finally drifted to the shores of France, the little company of saints buried Sainte Anne's body in a cave in a place called Apt in the south of France. The church, which was later built over the spot, fell into decay because of wars and religious persecutions. And as the centuries passed, the place of Sainte Anne's tomb was forgotten. The long years of peace which Charlemagne's wise rule gave to southern France enabled the people to build a magnificent new church on the site of the old chapel at Apt. Extraordinary and painstaking labor went into the building of the great structure, and when the day of its consecration arrived, Easter Sunday 792 AD, the beloved Charlemagne, little suspecting what was in store for him, declared himself happy indeed to have journeyed so many miles to be present for the holy occasion. At the most solemn part of the ceremonies, a boy of 14, blind, deaf, and dumb from birth, and usually quiet and impassive, to the amazement of those who knew him, completely distracted the attention of the entire congregation by becoming suddenly tremendously excited. He rose from his seat, walked up the aisle to the altar steps, and struck his stick resoundingly again and again upon a single step. His embarrassed family tried to lead him out, but he would not budge. He continued frantically to pound the step, straining with his poor muted senses to impart a knowledge sealed hopelessly within him. The eyes of the people turned upon the emperor, and he, apparently inspired by God, took the matter into his own hands. Charlemagne called for workmen to remove the steps. A subterranean passage was revealed directly below the spot which the boy's stick had indicated. Into this passage the blind lad jumped, to be followed by the emperor and the priests and the workmen. They made their way in the dim light of candles, and when farther along in the passage they came upon a wall that blocked further advance, the boy signed that this also should be removed. When the wall fell, there was brought to view still another long, dark corridor. At the end of this, the searchers found a crypt, upon which, to their profound wonderment, a vigil lamp, alight and burning in a little walled recess, cast a heavenly radiance. As Charlemagne, with his afflicted small guide and their companions, stood before the lamp, its light went out. And at the same moment, the boy, blind and deaf and dumb from birth, felt sight and hearing and speech flood into his young eyes, his ears, and his tongue. "It is she, he cried out. The great emperor, not knowing what he meant, nevertheless repeated the words after him. The call was taken up by the crowds in the church above, as the people sank to their knees, bowed in the realization of the presence of something celestial and holy. The crypt at last was opened, and a casket was found within it. In the casket was a winding sheet, and in the sheet were relics, and upon the relics was an inscription that read, "Here lies the body of Sainte Anne, mother of the glorious Virgin Mary." The winding sheet, it was noted, was of Eastern design and texture. Charlemagne, overwhelmed, venerated with profound gratitude the relics of the Mother of Heaven's Queen. He remained a long time in prayer. The priests and the people, awed by the graces given them in such abundance, and by the choice of their countryside for such a heavenly manifestation, for 3 days spoke but rarely, and then in whispers. The emperor had an exact and detailed account of the miraculous finding drawn up by a notary and sent to Pope St. Leo III with an accompanying letter from himself. These documents and the Pope's reply are preserved to this day.